Hello, 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 hello. Hello, 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 hello.
Yes, it's in here.
All right, we good?
Yes.
We are live in effects. Let me get in the group. You ready? You can start us off. Go ahead.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our weekly virtual support group. Let me tell you all, Sharea and I's preparation for this broadcast today was totally fire, okay? So we are very excited about this topic today. We're talking about the importance of communication in relationships. We have brought up this topic before. I just want to say that just before we even get into the depths of our conversation, but we have such an awesome example to use today of what happens when you don't communicate with anyone, whether that's a romantic relationship, a platonic relationship, just communication breakdowns just causes just other issues to come out of that. So we are going to be basing this off of the finale from Insecure on Sunday. If you saw it, we all know that you have a ton of emotions about everything that went down. If you have not seen Insecure, you don't need to see that in order to participate.
I should have put on here spoiler alert.
Oh, yes. Oh, spoiler alert. So, yes. So, first, spoiler alert, if you plan on seeing it. So, if you plan on watching the episode, please pause this and come back and watch the replay after you see the episode of season 9, because you're going to be mad at us with the spoilers if you have not seen the episode yet. If for those of you who do not watch Insecure, you will still be able to participate in this discussion today, because we're going to give an overview of what happened. And ultimately, we're just using this as an example to talk about the importance of relationships. And I didn't introduce us. I'm Sherry. And this is Sharea. You guys know us by now, but just in case anyone new is watching, that's who we are. We do this on a weekly basis just to provide some information and resources and support as we are all navigating these unprecedented times between the global pandemic, racial injustice, police brutality, and so many other things in between. Also, just want to, with our discussion, we welcome everyone's perspective. Please be engaged in the comments. I do ask so that you do be mindful of your comments and not to say anything that could be disrespectful or rude or insensitive to people. We have a variety of perspectives. Even as Sharea and I talk today, you'll see the difference in some of our opinions about what's happening. But at the end of the day, everyone matters. Everyone is valuable. Everyone's perspective is valuable.
All right, sister, all life matters. Like, all opinions matter. No, we good. We get it. We might have a difference of opinion, but we know how to show each other a level of respect on how we talk about it, right?
Yes, we want to still say we love everybody. Yeah.
So let's talk. You want to give a little bit of I guess we can give a little bit of background. Like I said, spoiler alert. We're going to talk a little bit about Insecure, and specifically that the topic that we're going to start with, I think, can kind of go to where it's going to go after. Oh wait, we're supposed to do updates. Are we going to do that after?
Yeah. Well, we can start off. Let's start off with the updates, because this is going to be a really juicy.
All right, so let's go to updates. I'm sorry.
Yes.
What's going on in the world today? I'll let you go.
Oh, all right. So we know that the pandemic is still thriving, unfortunately. There are some states that are starting to open up. So we want to encourage everyone to remain safe as you are going out doing what you do. Practice social distancing. Make sure you're still wearing your mask. Make sure you're still washing your hands very frequently, and just practicing just good cleansing and hygiene habits just in general. Racial injustice and police brutality. Whew. This week has been a week full of just tons of things, but we had some wins this week as well. So we know that there was the incident in Atlanta where a gentleman was actually murdered in a drive-through. The officers have since been charged, and the charges for the one officer who actually was the one responsible for killing him, he has like 11 charges that were brought up against him. And so it seems like things are moving forward where, justice will be served. But we're just hopeful and prayerful in that situation. But even no matter what happens at the end of the day, a family has lost their father, their son, their husband, their brother. And so, we want to just continue to pray that we see not just posts on social media and speeches, but we see laws and policies that are put in place to prevent this from happening. President Trump continues to go on his rampage of just...
Oh, yeah, because, he put life into Juneteenth again. I want y'all to know that he breathed it in. Like, woo! It wasn't no Juneteenth until he touched it. That damn coon. I swear, like some things with him are so ridiculous. I can't help but to laugh. Like, so in order not to be so angry, I just laugh at his foolishness sometimes because that one absolutely, I just, I couldn't even put words into like when I first read I was like, is this real? Like, so I always have this dude, or is this real check just because of the world we live in? And I'm like, this man again, like there is no making up his character, his ability to like be a buffoon. Like there is no making this up. So all I could do was laugh. Besides I got angry at first and I was like, you know what? He's too stupid to even know. But the reality is there are going to be some people who believe that knowledge or believe that nonsense. Absolutely. Like,
yeah, so he did an interview yesterday, and now it's making its rounds saying that no one knew about Juneteenth before he scheduled a rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is the city for the worst race massacres that happened in the United States history. And he scheduled it on Juneteenth in Tulsa, which totally had all type of wrong vibes about it. And now as a result of that, he's taking credit for people finding out about the Juneteenth holiday because, like Sharea said, nobody knew about Juneteenth before
he just magically brought it to life. Like this, come on, like I just can't with him. I'm sorry, I just can't.
Yeah, it's a lot.
That's all I got is I just can't.
Yeah, he's like, in addition to him claiming credit for the Juneteenth holiday, despite the fact that he continues to make statements and tries to enact policies that disenfranchise people of color and other people as well, he then tried to pass a law in regards to saying that transgender individuals will not qualify for health coverage. And then what was the other one? The DACA.
For undocumented. Is it undocumented or?
Yeah, for the DACA. So the DACA Act, that was an Obama era policy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so Trump tried to undo that. The Supreme Court did their jobs and said, no, this is totally not okay. And so
they did their job when it came to making sure that, healthcare and where you can't discriminate against a person for their position or job related to their gender. I mean, it seems like common sense, but and that really specifically was about trying to discriminate towards transgender individuals. And so, again, his madness. That's all I got is his madness.
Yeah. So the one thing, that we mentioned when we were prepping for this is that regardless of what your opinions are, whether that's from a religious standpoint or your personal viewpoints, your religious or personal viewpoint should never be at the point of dehumanizing anyone for who they are, how they identify, and how they live their life. This is not okay. And so all of us should be outraged that Trump actually attempted to do this because he was trying to dehumanize someone. This is the same evil that we saw against Black people where we were in the constitutional on law at just 3/5 of a purpose. It was a dehumanization of who we are and what we have and have to offer, and it totally just resulted in years and years of where we are today. But, we won't get into the whole history of America, but this is the same thing that is happening to transgender individuals as well. And so we need to make sure that we are all outraged about this because, again, this is an
justice for anyone is injustice for all.
Yes.
Period. Absolutely. And that becomes the part about humanity that you can't just decide who deserves humanity.
Right.
That just makes absolutely no sense to me, but I've learned that what makes no sense to me could be common sense to others.
So we're not about that life here in at the Arts Counseling Wellness Center within a self-care group as individuals. Again, we're not saying you can't have your own opinions or beliefs, but please check your opinions and beliefs when it results in the dehumanization of anyone. That's just totally not okay. So thankfully the Supreme Court, let Trump know.
Yeah, 1 or 2 wins and there's still space to fight. Always space to keep fighting. And as long as we have the level of ignorance that we have in our society going on, then there will always be space to fight, but we don't have to give up. And I think we wanted to make sure we talked about those things, but making sure that, again, even in talking about them, you are taking your breaks and taking care of yourself in the midst of all that. And also making sure other people are taken care of, right? So go ahead. Let's go to what we're talking about today because I can go on and on.
So this is a self-care group, so we have to make sure we throw that in. And so that's where Sharea was going.
Taking care of everyone, like and or taking care of each other in this time is really important. Like our self-care includes others. I know that like that's an important portion of even being an activist and even being activated into protest and wanting to support injustice or change injustice. We have to make sure that we are caring for each other in this midst of this. So, but we'll come back to that in the end.
Yeah, so there's a lot, and like that's just the tip of an iceberg of everything that came out. There's so many other things we could talk about, but we're going to jump into our discussion for today, which is talking about the importance of communication. Okay, so just again, spoiler alerts for the season finale of Insecure, because you guys are not going to be coming for us in the comments saying that we didn't give you the warning that this is spoiler alerts. So do you want to summarize what happened?
I'm only going to spoil maybe some of it, right? Maybe try not to spoil the whole thing. But one of the main factors of the conversation that we want to talk about is the reality that Lawrence finds out that Condola is pregnant and wants to keep a child that he doesn't want to keep. As well as at that time, he's trying to kind of reshape his life, his relationship with Issa, and really trying to figure out how to move forward, knowing now that he has to share this with Issa. So that's the conversation starter that we want to kind of talk about. And so you're going to talk about what you felt or how you felt, and then I'll tell you what I felt. Because I don't really got no give on what I feel.
So how I felt, I was actually disappointed in both of them, in Lawrence and Condola, because I felt like there were so many conversations they both needed to have before you even get to this point. So let's just start there. Just that, and I get like, oh, you see someone that's like, oh, she's really cute, or oh, he's really fine. You know, I want that. Let me see what they about. Okay, that's human nature. The attraction is normal. There's nothing wrong with the attraction. But in order to be, I think, responsible and mature, it's important to just talk before you allow your hormones and the attraction to take over, to put you in a position where you now have to make decisions that literally affect the rest of your life. So it's like, I get it. You know, sex feels great, right? Okay, we're not going to try to say it doesn't. But don't allow your desire for sex to put you in a situation where now you got to have conversations and life experiences that just totally change the whole trajectory of your life. So with it, like I grew up when my parents were married and they divorced when I was really young. So I ended up growing up in a single parent household. And so this episode did have some personal, like it triggered a few things for me personally, where I'm just like, oh, now this child is going to grow up without both of their parents in their life. Because Lawrence at this point is saying he don't want the baby. And he also tried to talk, ask Condola if she would get an abortion, which we're going to get to that in a second, because that's whatever. Totally not okay. But, and so for me, it just reminded me of how I grew up and how I wanted both my parents in the household. And so to know that this child now has to have this experience, it could have been avoided if Lawrence and Condola would have talked, and then Condola would have saw like, oh, you know what? This isn't the man I want to have my baby with. I want my baby to actually have both parents involved in their lives. Now, I want to put emphasis on the parents being involved in the child's life. I'm not saying they need to be married, they not to be together, because one of the things, and I won't take off Sharea's point, I think she'll bring it up in her own segment, is that, you know, it's important to have both parents involved in a child's life. Children can still have very great lives with just one parent, but it's something I don't want to take away the benefits that also comes from when you have both parents in your life, you know? The other thing, I'm also mad at the fact that he even asked her to have an abortion.
Oh, wait, one at a time, you can't go to the next point.
Oh. Okay.
One at a time. Okay. You're trying to jump your points to get it all in. No. So my point and my thoughts on it is that they both understand. So first off, both of them are grown adults. What that means is, as an adult, you understand the basis of biology, which means that every single time you put your penis into a vagina, there's a possibility that a person can get pregnant, period. Right? And so that means I, as the person, as Lawrence or Condola, had an opportunity, regardless of whether they like it or not, how brief, how whatever, to say to myself, well, if I'm about to have sex with this person, I could get them pregnant or I could get pregnant and have to have a child. Yeah. You, Condola or Lawrence, both decided that the moment that, here's the thing, as grown-ups, you decided this was not, it was consensual sex, right? So it wasn't like it was coerced, it wasn't like it was rape, it wasn't like it was assault. This was consensual sex. The second they decided to have sex, I don't care if it was in the heat of the moment, in the conversation, 18 conversations. Once you have sex, you have the risk of actually having a baby. So therefore, that means, guess what? Whatever happens means that you actually are now going to have a baby. That's really that. That's truly the point. Like, so to me, I don't really have no argument about if a single parent versus a full house is the best opportunity for a child or not, because I feel very strongly that single parents as well as two parents can raise a child, in a full healthy child. And I also feel very strongly that children in two parent homes have been raised in some very dysfunctional homes that also might lead to unhealthy habits and or behaviors later in life. So I don't think, and I also feel very strongly that you can create emotional tribes to support your family and to support what your family needs to be able to be healthy. So I don't really take into consideration the whole parenting argument at all, just because I feel strongly that you made a decision when you laid down with each other that you could get pregnant. Had you had conversations, because that's where our point is going to be, we wouldn't even be here. You could say, look, I want to have children, and if I get pregnant, I'm keeping my child. That equates to I'm keeping my child, and there's no question back and forth. I have to then make a decision as an adult if this is going to make sense for me to be with you. Now, if you decide to not be with me, I got to understand that too. But at the end of the day, the moment we had sex, you also no longer get a pass. I'm sorry. Like, you don't get to be like, well, we didn't know it was going to happen. We thought we were protected. Yes, but no form of birth control is 100%.
Except for abstinence.
Let's not, okay, yeah. Okay. No form of active sex birth control is going to prevent, possibly, or has 100% prevent it, right? Yeah. So unless you were going to abstain, then you knew when you laid down that you run the risk. And I just feel strongly that you don't get a chance, or you don't get the opportunity to be like, well, no, I don't want that kid now. Unless that was something you discussed at the beginning too, where it was like, well, if anything happens and we've had sex and we use all the protection that we need and we want to have abortion, then that's something that you can talk about too. But to not talk about it, to not realize that your bodies are biologically capable of having children, I don't know, like, that's like science. That's like biology, 9th grade, 10th grade. So, but that's my take. I don't really even consider the parenting portion. And I get where you're coming from, but I also really feel strongly that we have proof that you can create environments that don't include a parent and they still have healthy upbringing. We also have proof that you could have both parents and it's totally the worst thing in the whole world for you as an adult, as a child. So
and I totally agree with that too. That's why I didn't even come from the angle of make sure you're both married or make sure you're both living in it, because I totally agree. Like, I can't defute Sharea on that point. It's very true. Like, we see people in the work that we do, we see that, right? And then not only that, there's tons of studies and
it's just the unhealthiness of individuals, right? So when we think about like how unhealthy a person is, you put that person with an unhealthy person and they have a child, and it still runs the risk of that child being unhealthy because of their exposure to that unhealthy person, right? Yeah. And so for me, I eliminate that factor, because I can't guarantee that just because you are married, just because you are a man and woman, just because you are a woman with no children, or just with a child by yourself, or a man with a child by yourself, that any of those equations would equal healthy or unhealthy, right? Because none of them actually, because I know we talked about this a little bit last week when I talked about my ACE score. And I know I went past this weekend and I actually did it. I know we're going to go off a little bit, but I actually did it over because I couldn't remember my actual score because it had been so long since I did it. And last week I said, oh man, I'm walking around here with like a 6 out of 10 on the ACE thing. And I'm really walking around here with 8, right? And so the reality is that that 8, by definition of this assessment, means that I could be or should be doing certain things or have certain unhealthy things in my life. However, the work and the things that I was willing to do to take care of myself changed that entire trajectory for me. And so if it came down to it, yeah, I could have been married with no work and had that score that was 8 and living very dysfunctional. And guess what? I brought a child into the world and it's unhealthy because I didn't take care of me, or I didn't do what I needed to do to resolve the anger, the hurt, the abuse. I didn't do any of that work. And now I have a child, but yeah, I got a husband and so for me, I take in, and this is also just a side note, I feel very strongly that the healthiest relationships include healthy individuals. Yeah, it's not this magic pill like where, okay, I'm healthy and then I can magically make my husband healthy. No, what happens is that individual has to come in healthy and or get the work they need done to be healthy, to be able to partner with someone else to be healthy. That's just the reality. Whether we like that or not doesn't mean it's not true. So go ahead.
Yeah, and so my whole thing too is that with children, when you look at children have no control on how healthy you are. Children have no control over their environments. And so that's why like my focus is more so on the children, where it's like, where are you bringing this child into? Because of the fact that you didn't, one, first have a conversation, and then two, even with the point Sharea just brought out about taking the time to heal, and then also making sure you really are in a community where you have other people who can support you, whether you're a single parent or you have both parents in a child's life. Like, it's one of those things where just children don't need to continue to suffer because we continue to make decisions from a place of not being well, And so like, that's my, like, and looking at how this episode like play out right now, they're not setting up a pretty good environment right now.
And so my argument on the opposite side is that I actually, and I know people have, like you told me earlier, they came for her on the internet. Yeah. I actually think that Canola is pretty healthy in the things that she displayed in the few episodes that we got to know her. We don't know her fully, but she was very clear once he asked her, do I want to be in a relationship? She was like, no, that's not my idea. That wasn't where I want to go. I just got out of a divorce. It's only been a year and a half for me. Plus, I think you're still in love with your ex. And she was right, because just a few episodes later, you go back to her, right? And so in a lot of ways, she wasn't being unhealthy. The area that they weren't talking about is where they were unhealthy. But in terms of, is she possibly a good product for that child? I really think so, because she actually, stable-wise, she's more stable than Lawrence. He's just getting his new gig. He's just getting, right? As well as she made an emotional decision. She said it in the episode. She was like, I'm ready now. As long as she says she's ready now, that means that all the things she needs, she had a circle when we saw that Thanksgiving of friends who seem to have been around her for a consistently long time. I just don't feel like you can just say she can't do it because he's not in. But I also feel like the moment they didn't talk. Like, you got to talk about these things, but you also got to see, is Lawrence healthy fully? We saw him get a job. We didn't see him do any work on himself surrounding the issues he was having about being depressed, about being hurt, about being broken at the relationship. We didn't see none of that stuff. We just said because he is now better because he has a new job, that means he's better. And I don't know if just getting a good job equates to being healed or healthy. And that's where, to me, what work has he done? What work are you, and here's a good question for all of us to ask ourselves. What work am I willing to do to maintain healthiness? I can't answer the definition of healthy for you, but I can say that all of us can give ourselves that question, right? So for me right now, one of the areas that I'm trying to work really passionately in is my health and my eating, right? And trying to make sure that I take it serious so that way I don't have an excuse related to what I feel my body is dealing with, right? And so that means changing my habits. That means walking more. That means getting up earlier than I was for the last couple of weeks to make sure that I'm up so I can do 3 miles versus 2, right? It's being able to be conscious that if I want something different, I got to, even communicating to yourself is a skill, right? If I want something different, I got to tell myself something different. And then I got to take steps to get that different. I'm not sure Lawrence did that. All we know is he got a good
Yeah,
job.
especially yeah, because even when they went out to dinner, I think that was on the previous episode, when they went out to dinner and they were, him and Issa were talking about their past relationship. Issa, to me, did more to confessing than he did. Like confessing kind of like where she messed up in the relationship. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that just goes to further prove your point about we still haven't seen him do the work. You know, like he made like one comment, I forget what he said. But yeah, it's just that so then let's go to the next point too. Well, do you want to talk about the abortion, or do you want to talk about the feedback that how people are dragging Condola with even wanting to keep the baby? Okay,
that one is fine. I think they kind of blend together because I do want to talk about like why are we so angry?
Yes,
like why are we so angry with a person's individual decision? Like that, I didn't know that. I haven't been on social media a lot, although it looks like I am. I try to come into the group once in a while. I'm trying to do like a bunch of things, but I have a lot of other projects that I'm doing in real life, right? And so I don't really have the time. And so I haven't been on Twitter and all those things. So I didn't get to know that they were actually calling her names, calling her not out of her name. Like all of that stuff to me seemed very childish. But I guess that's part of social media too. Like we're in a different stage now with what's acceptable in terms of like assaulting a character, not realizing that it's also assaulting a Black woman's perspective, right? Absolutely. Or perspective of a woman. Because at the end of the day, even if you don't agree with it, even if it's not the perspective you would have taken, she still has a choice and she still owns or has the ownership over her body. And so I don't know why we would then attack her because Lawrence says he doesn't want a child. That just doesn't feel right to me. Like,
yeah, and then encouraging her to have an abortion, so I do believe in free choice. Let me start that stat. Like a woman, no one should tell a woman what to do with her body, whether that's, choosing to keep a child or not choosing to keep a child or to have a baby. At the same token though, to try to tell somebody else to have an abortion because you don't want them to have a child is so many levels of just, I'm trying to find a nice term to say. It's not okay. Let me say that. It's not okay for you to tell a woman who has a baby growing on the side of her that she needs to get an abortion because you don't like the fact that now the father of the child is not going to be with her. Or wants to be with his ex-girlfriend. Like it was toxic.
Well, it's immature, right? And so with the level of immaturity in that thinking, I think maybe possibly you really can't even consider that thought, but I guess you have to, because I'm just like, so when did it become okay for us to root for someone to lose a life, right, so they can date another person? Like that kind of seems toxic, but
because that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah, I'm just like,
and so this is where even communicate, huh?
No, I just said it's toxic. No.
Because this is even where communication, not just with other people, with yeah, it totally is like really toxic. And so this is where even in communication with yourself and taking this analysis to see why are you demonstrating this type of behavior? Yes, it's a fictional character, but there's real Condolas in this world. There are people like Lawrence, like Issa, who really live in our world. There may be people in our families, in our communities that we actually personally know. And so this toxic post that we're seeing on social media towards her is that this is now what we can expect for people in our community as well. Because if you're saying this, if you feel so free to put this on social media where anybody can see it, because this is with public posts. I'm not talking about people's posts where they have it private, whatever, or their pages are restricted, and even then that's not 100% private. But, just to put out that negativity and that level of toxicity is really, it had me concerned about the wellness of our community at large, whereas it's like, how do we support each other even when people make decisions that we may not agree with? We're not talking about, Condola isn't saying that she's about to go out and bomb a whole building or something like that. She's not saying that she's about to go out and murder someone. All she's saying is that she's choosing to keep a baby that's growing inside of her body. So for us to feel okay with making these quote unquote jokes to dehumanize her, to call her out of her name, to, want her to say she needs to have an abortion, like it's it made me concerned just again about the health of our communities and how do we support each other and how do we communicate with each other when we're going through difficult or challenging situations, and even how do we talk to ourselves.
So let's take that into some conversations, because you made a couple points, right? So the first thing I heard was, how do we support each other even when we don't agree with each other, right? So what is the answer to that? The answer is to acknowledge that in ourselves, we may not agree with the said action, right, or behavior, but that does not indicate that that person doesn't deserve our support, right? So being able to separate your emotional response to something with the actual facts and logic of how a person may need you is a very important skill in general, right? Because in a community support, or in a way that we can, when we talk about earlier, how do you support each other with self-care? This is another opportunity, right? Where you can actually say the emotional support that she may need is different than my opinion about what she's doing, right? Yeah. So how do I separate the two? I'm and having a conversation yesterday with my sister. It was a good conversation. I think it was yesterday or the day before. I can't remember now. They all kind of blend. We were talking about having an opportunity to support somebody without judgment and how important that is. And the reality is, you don't get to judge another person's life, choices, and behaviors if it does not impact you, right? Once it impacts you, you have an opportunity to say, here's my boundary related to it. But you don't get to judge their behavior, because at the end of the day, you're not there. You don't get their lived experience. You don't know what they've been through to be in this position, to make that poor decision, or a decision that differently than what you would make. Because who's to say it's poor, right? Because just because you don't agree with it doesn't make yours right, right? And so really being able to separate a person's behaviors, opinions, and things that they do with what needs they might have, right? I think, honestly, how are we going to take care of each other? How are we as sisters going to look and say, I need to support this person because they don't have an additional father. They don't have an additional sister. They don't have I need to support this person because they just lost their parent. Right? Not because they just lost their parent, but, oh, well, that person's mother was on drugs, so who cares, right? Because then that becomes what people do. They put judgment on who or how what person deserves the support, what person deserves the helping hand, right? There's no judgment on it. Really, it comes down, if I'm going to support someone, then I have to separate my judgment of either the action or behavior that I may not agree with from the support that the person may need. Two separate things, right? And so really, I'm going to say, just from the therapy hat in me, one of the 8 ways to do this is to acknowledge that we all have emotions, right? So you see me doing a circle, and we all have logic. It's when we put those two together that we are our healthiest. It's when we try to look at it from just the emotions or just the logic, we lose track that there's humanity in the middle, right? Yeah. And so when we think about it from that perspective, I really can't judge Canola on her decision, if I'm using that example, because the decision was hers to make emotionally and logically, and then putting it together is what she chose, right? So emotionally, I'm having a child. I wasn't ready in the past. Logically, I know that we're not together. I know that you're not the man that I wanted to be with, but I also know that I'm over a certain age and I wanted children. And if I don't take this opportunity, who's to say I would have it again? I'm going to have this child. I don't get to decide that for her. She has to. And then I don't call her names because I want her to date someone else or him to date someone else and she's having a baby with. Issa and Lawrence got to have that conversation, because that's another thing. I mean, the other part that I forgot to tell you about was that they end up having dinner at the end. Sorry, side note, like Sharea and I off camera like to talk about these things, but really taking into consideration what emotional, right, logic in between is where you need to be. When you find yourself outraged, angered, can't get anything think straight through your mind, that means you're too far in emotions. That means that you need to say to yourself, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What is the right thing? What is the right thing, or the thing that I'm capable of doing in this moment that will help me to be less angry, right? If you're over here where it's like, well, no, it needs to be done this, because you have those people who think they call themselves type A personalities, but really it can become anal. Maybe that's what A stands for. I don't know. But it's like, you got to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 18 things for you to be perfect. But then what you're doing is you're setting up yourself where you don't actually consider, how does this emotionally impact me? So I have a plan, I have a direction, but how is this emotionally impacting me? I'm too far onto the logic when I need to come in the middle, right? So think of it almost like an overlap. And I don't know if I can put pictures, like one, it's supposed to be a training. I don't know if I can do pictures in the things, but if I can, I'll drop it in the chat, like an actual diagram to show what I'm saying. Where actually, if you go to my Instagram, it's on there, but it's like a long time ago. It's called a DBT chart, and it kind of shows you the emotional and logical, and it actually gives you the terms as to where you need to be in order to make healthy, wise decisions. And so I'm going to stop being a therapist and go to our next point, because this is a virtual support. This is not therapy. Go ahead. Sorry.
But we can apply that even to the current racial dynamics we have happening here in the US, is that you have some people, we see that. You have some people who are just purely on the emotional side, justifiably. You have some people who are just on the logistics side. And until we come together in that aspect of understanding humanity, is that because you have some people who will try to dismiss the realities of racism and discrimination because you can't prove it, which there is statistical evidence to prove the disproportionate effect of injustice and racism against Black people.
And as well as there's biological factors. There's things like stress, the constant heart disease killing us early, dying sooner, right? There's so many things that could prove that there's a system of racism in our country, period. We don't have to justify that. So I agree, you're right. You can use it for anything. But the reality of it is that if you don't get into that middle part, then you lose track of actually being able to make logical and lasting decisions, right? And so I'm going to say something that I think a lot of people don't always say. I am all for anger. I'm not for anger that brutalizes you or anyone else, right? So anger is not a negative emotion. It's how we release that anger and how we behave when we're angry. That is the issue, right? And so those are two separate things, right? If we can learn that anger is never the enemy, right? Because sometimes you had to get angry, right? So sometimes you have to get angry to make a better decision, right? I'm in a bad marriage. This person's beating me. That's hitting me. I'm so angry. I got to get out of here, right? Yeah. That's not a bad thing. It's when the anger becomes, I'm hurting myself. I'm hurting others. I'm hurting things in order to satisfy this anger. That's when it's an issue. And so really finding ways to release your anger in a way that doesn't damage you is the goal, not to not have anger, right? So, because to not have anger is to not be human, right? And we have all emotions. It's how we release them that is either negative or positive. And so if we could be more friendly or kind to ourselves and acknowledge that the anger and the emotion isn't the issue, it's how I'm releasing it or how I'm harming myself or others. That I don't even know how it got there, but go ahead.
No, so we have a comment/question in the group. So I want to read that. So it says that as we try to balance these two worlds, the emotion versus logical parts of yourself, have you seen people just result to being numb because it's hard to balance the two? I would say absolutely. I've seen that in myself over the past few weeks, is that I've had points of numbness. Within the past few days, there's been more stories of police brutalities and murders. There's new stories that's coming out about things that happened a few months ago around the same time as Ahmaud Arbery. And at this point, I can't post another hashtag. I just can't, because it's a lot. It's a lot to keep seeing more names to be added to the list and to still have people who try to deny the reality of the fact that there's a problem. And so for me, I recognize that when I get to those places of numbness, it's me trying to be safe emotionally and mentally, because I don't ever, even as
protective factor.
As aware of what's going on, I don't want to get to the point of losing all hope. I don't want to get to the point of despair.
So yes is the answer to the first part of the question. Can you reread the second part for me? Because I want to make sure I answer that part.
Yeah, so he said, have you seen people just result to being numb because it's hard
to balance the two? Okay, yes. Okay, so yes. That's a yes. I thought there was in my mind I heard, so what do I do about it?
Oh, okay. So
so yes and yes.
Give some tips on what to do.
Like, yes and yes. I'm not going to force you to want an answer. No, but it really is. So what that's considered, and I'm trying not to get too clinical because this isn't like a real clinical, but I guess we're here, we're going to dance, right? When I was younger, I used to say, you're in a club, you might as well dance. And I still say that. So what I'm saying when I was younger, that's a lie. So yes and yes. And so part of what happens to us when we are experiencing or living through what is considered a trauma and or experiences of high emotional response, right? So that could be grief, that could be trauma, that could be neglect or different layers of abuse within relationships would all still kind of fall under trauma, right? So it can be a number of reasons why we are falling into this. It's gotten so bad that I can't even be emotional anymore and I can't even get to a logical place. So then I just go straight to this place of like numbness. And so, and other people might say they get frozen, they get numb. Other people might say, I get to the point where I'm doing actively damaging things to my body, like overeating, not sleeping, right? So there's multiple ways for that same impact to be happening. And so really that's considered, and we talked about this a little bit last week, I think so, but I'm not going to, and then I'm going to plug something that I'm doing in a few weeks. But we're talking about that's the window of tolerance and being outside of it, one direction or the other. So when you're numb, that's considered hypo aroused. And when you're like alert and kind of like, God, somebody's going to shoot me, something's going to happen, I know this, like looking for the next thing, that's considered hyper, right? And so what happens is that your job or your skill that you would need to work on to be able to get out of that is to be able to determine how to shock your system back into a calm, right? And not with an additional trauma. So I need you to hear this part. Not shocking your system with an additional trauma is important, because you can shock your system, but it be traumatic, and then it puts you in this center place, but it's not healthy, right? So shocking your system could be things like, literally, this is going to sound a little like bizarre, but literally things like, all right, I'm feeling really numb. I have no more left. I'm going to go put my face in the freezer so that I can feel the air and that coldness on me to kind of give me an awakening, right? And it's like an alert. So it's called self-soothing, right? So that's one method. However, most people are not going to do that, right? Because it's like, that seems crazy. I can't do that. I'm not going to waste my time and do, because it doesn't feel like it'll work. But what happens is that our system went numb, which means our system needs to do what? Be woken up, right? And so there's different techniques that the person you're working with or someone that you choose to work with can give you, but you got to find a way to get from wherever you are on that one side or the other, right? Because I would argue that you really aren't, that you're numb because you were probably in the emotional more than you were in the logical, and it feels like you got numb as a result. But that emotion is usually too heavy. If you get too largely in emotions, that causes you to be numb. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. And that, because that's exactly how I was feeling a few days ago. So I forget what day it was. It might have been actually the end of last week, where I saw like 4 or 5 news stories back to back. And so I had to get off of social media. I had to take a moment. One, I had to just, so I had to get off social media. I let myself just cry. And then I took time to pray. And then I took time to pray. And I wasn't all like, oh, Heavenly Father, how gracious and marvelous. I'm like, God, I just saw this. This is how I'm feeling. Please give me, like, the way I'm talking on this broadcast, that's how I talk to God when I pray. And that's so I did that. And that helped me. And then I went and I watched the episode Different World.
So in that moment, and I'm just going to make, and hear me out, people. I'm going to make prayer a resource, right? A coping skill. Not saying that it's not a magical and connecting experience, right? But what it did was, it was your jump. It was your joint. It was the thing that jumped you into your, like, I'm out of this. I got to get out of this, right? So you did something. You said, I'm going to shut myself down. I shut down. As I shut down, I took away all the things that were coming in to my system too fast. We don't always have that option, because when you're in abusive relationships, when you're in the midst of major grief, those are much harder to do because you can't always stop it. It's just too many things going. So I want people to know that I hear that and understand that. But when you have the option, right, it's a lot of things come, you stop, literally stop whatever you're doing. And you say, I got to do something different in the moment to be able to self-soothe enough to get myself safely de-escalated from the emotion.
Yeah.
That does not mean the emotion is magically going to go away and never come back. What it means is that I have gotten to an overload. And in that overload, I need to turn it down a notch so that I can get safely enough to deal with the emotion. Right. And so what you did was you said, oh, I'm going to go and do this prayer. And I'm going to sit there and I'm going to pray. I'm going to be realistic in my prayer. I'm not going to sit here and try to do it the way I saw Pastor so-and-so do it in 1902. I'm going to talk to God real quick. And I'm going to do that in a way that still honors whatever my beliefs are. And then as a result, I'm going to go take my brain down from the emotional, right? That becomes the technique of distracting, right? So first, the thing is you open the refrigerator up. Woo, it's cold. It wakes me up. All right, I'm alert again. Now that I'm alert, I need to do something different. What am I telling myself? What am I saying to myself? What got me to the point that, because here's the thing, if we can start catching those things that are piling onto our emotions, then we also can start resolving them. But if we are starting to wait until the emotion gets so out of our hands that we get angry, numb, whatever you want to say is your emotional response to it, then it's much harder. That's where you need to get that thing to jump you back into a normal space. Not going to take the emotions away. So I don't want y'all sitting here and be like, she lied and told me the emotion going to go away. No, I didn't say that. What it's going to do is just give you a second to stop, catch yourself, and then try to determine what you need to de-escalate. Right? So for somebody, it could be as simple as I'm just going to sit and listen to music. Shout out to the person who gave me Breathe in that list of music and songs today. The other day when I posted about so I created a music playlist based off of all the favorites from the group. But shout out to the person who put up Breathe. First off, the whole playlist is great to just listen to after I'm walking or while I'm walking. So it's awesome. But shout out to that person. It's a really cool, if you get a chance in the group, look at the list of songs, but check out the song Breathe. It's from an orchestra and it's just amazing, like whatever. But my point being, then I find something. I thought I lost my track, but I didn't. Then I find something to bring me down or to de-escalate myself by listening to something, watching something, seeing something, whatever the case is, to get myself down enough to be able to address the emotion. Now, I think a lot of us would like emotions to go away, right? So they would like it to just magically, okay, because I have a lot of people, well, I have anger issues. Okay. You understand that there's a root to your anger issues. So the anger isn't the issue. It's whatever the root of the anger is. That's the issue. Let's deal with that and then learn how to process your anger or to express your anger in a way that isn't damaging to you or someone else. Make sense?
Yeah, no, that's good. It's definitely good. The person, so she's definitely vibing with us. Thank you for that comment and that question. But ultimately, and finding other outlets. So for me, I realized that I was on social media too much that day. So I had to stop. And then I've just found other outlets. So even for me, part of me helping to have that balance between the having humanity that involves the logic and the emotions of what's going on is being part of this support group every week. Like, this is a great outlet for me where it helps me to be able to, one, vent, but then also to be able to invoke just that sense of there's still some good things happening in the world, being part of here and engaging with you all, doing that. And then other things that I do as well. Like, so I've started doing other things even for outlets as well, as a way to be able to vent about the emotions of what I'm feeling, but to hopefully bring some contribution to the logic aspect of it to push us towards this point or goal of humanity so that we can stop seeing just like what's happening. It's a work in progress. Some days are easier than others. I have not mastered it. And it's an ongoing journey.
Stop punishing yourself, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you so I have this thing where I make journals for my clients and they just randomly so it based off of I'll be working with a client, they'll say or do something. I'm like, well, you need to journal. And they're like, no, I'm going to journal. Then they don't. And we go through that for about 6 or 7 sessions. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what else to tell you because the answer is the answer I gave you, right? And so it's joke, but it's not. And so then I create a journal because it's just like an absolute crafting / separation for me too. So I actually think it's self-soothing for me to create them now because I'm just like creating them crazy. And so I'll create one and it'll be just for one client. Like, just like, here's what you need. There is such a important benefit to releasing emotions. And so if you're not a person who can do a podcast, who can do our different ways of expressing ourselves, journal. Find a journal that will help you to structure your journaling if you don't know what to journal about, right? And so like my recent one I just made for I have a young person that I'm working with, and it's specific to body image. And so literally it's like, tell me a beautiful thing about your body today. Like, give me 3 to 5 things you're grateful for. Tell me what brought you pleasure today. Right. And so being able to, and literally I put it in her journal and it's like 4 boxes. You got to write 2 sentences. It may seem like, well, that's a waste of time, or that doesn't immediately, because that's what everyone in this country has this fantasy that I can immediately heal, when most stuff that you're dealing with took a lot of years and a lot of baggage. And so it's going to take some years or some time to take it off. And so journaling is a way to release it as you're processing and dealing with it with someone that's a professional or someone in a support group, right? And or learning from different elements of how to heal, right? But you need to journal to get the emotions out. You need to express it in a way that doesn't stay inside of you.
Yeah.
It doesn't stay stuck inside where you can't get anything from it, because, well, you're getting something from it, but anything good from it, right? Because if you leave anger alone, if you leave sadness alone, if you leave emotions that create heavy loads inside you with no release, then they're going to eat at you even when you don't talk about them, right?
Yeah.
I read something the other day that talked about how there's medical connections to stress in almost every illness. So every single illness that we see has a connection to stress. And one things that they say, besides gratitude, because you guys know how I feel about the importance of being grateful, besides gratitude is journaling and meditation. Meditation being different forms of meditation, right? And so you can meditate, you can pray, you can meditate on your higher power's word, right? So for me, it'd be the Bible. For another person, the Quran, right? So you can meditate and it be something very helpful, and be mindful, because that's a form of meditation, right? So making sure you're taking the efforts to get it out, but also to process after it's out is going to be important. So I feel like I keep trying not to go and you just let me. Like, see, this is where I need you, Sherry. Like, I need you to be like, Sharea, stop.
But it's not like you're saying things that are so off the wall. It's useful. And even based on the comments we're getting, I mean, people, are definitely benefiting as well. So, but I mean, ultimately, just please use the information. Let me say this, because other people have to pay to be able to get this information. So I'm not trying to be crass with saying that, but just really trying to drive the point home is that one, Sharea is a licensed professional, in case you guys have forgotten that. She's a licensed therapist. She's trained. And not only that does she have, because I don't want to get so caught up on just the information of it all, but just from personal experience, that you're getting both of us bring in our expertise and our experiences where we relate and we understand. So this is why we bring in the information. And so this isn't off the wall stuff that isn't going to happen. Try it out, and don't just do it for one day and say it doesn't work. Make sure that you do it, try it for at least 2 weeks. Try every single day for at least 2 weeks. If you don't see a change after that, okay, then, let's try another technique. But there are multiple options. Huh?
I would say 21 days.
Yeah, okay, so 21 days. So 21 days, any of the tips, just try out one of the tips that we talked about today. Or even you can check out the other broadcasts at the end in a few moments, we're going to be giving our regular self-care tips. Just try out one for 21 days, every single day. And if you don't see an improvement there, go back and try the next tip. But there is something, and it's going to work. There's another comment that we actually got here on Zoom that I want to read. So it says, the thought of separating emotions and logic and also acknowledging our own humanity is so freeing. I would beat myself up for my own humanity as if I shouldn't have those natural experiences or feel certain feelings or desires. Knowing that I can weigh and balance those humanly things that we face with morality, logic, and process those emotions, and not being led by my own humanity or only by my own humanity or emotions. No, that's good. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm glad that you got something out of that, because I know it's hard to see it without the actual visual, but I hope that it actually helps to bring some level of like first steps, right? What can I do now that I know that it's important to be kind to myself, to be compassionate to myself? I think we are sometimes our worst critics and enemies. And then as a result, it creates all different types of emotions. So being able to give yourself that compassion and that grace that we are seeking and or giving to others is very important. So I'm grateful to hear that it makes sense.
Yeah, so that's from one of our participants who are watching on Zoom. So thank you so much. And also to everyone who's watching in our Facebook group too. So I guess that's like a perfect leadway into our tips that we can try out.
It's always so good to hear and to see, like, to get questions and stuff. Like, again, if you guys have questions in the interim, make sure that you email myself. You can DM myself or Sherry with the questions, and we will make sure to answer them in our next meeting, which we do every Thursday at 4. And so this same link for the people that are in the Zoom is the same link that we continue to use. So once you have it, you have it. So I would save it if you want to come back and join with us on Thursdays at 4. If I'm not here, Sherry's here. If Sherry's gone, I'm here. So we try to make sure that we're here together so we can support each other. But we're trying to make sure that this is an opportunity for everyone who's listening or watching or contributing to get some information about caring for themselves during this moment. And so let's talk quickly about our 5 or few tips that we give each week, because we do not want to take for granted that everyone knows them just because we've been doing it. Go for it.
Okay, so Sharea already mentioned one about meditation. So that's a good resource to be able to use. There's so many different types of meditation. So you can find one that works best for you. It does not, there's different forms. Let me just say that. There's so many options when it comes to meditation, not just the stereotypical things that you see like in movies and TV shows. That's just one aspect. Sometimes it's an exaggerated aspect of what meditation is. But that's
cool too, but you definitely want to start where you are. So think about mindfulness as a form of meditation, right? So mindfulness meaning that you literally might eat a fruit very slowly and kind of feel all the texture within the fruit, the smell of the fruit, the shape of the fruit. You're describing and doing all that stuff without thinking of anything else. So mindfulness is a form of meditation. And if you can graduate from that, then you can graduate to creating those things in your mind that help you to kind of sit still and be peaceful. But don't feel the pressure to be an expert in meditation. You can start where you are by just simply even just eating slowly, walking, and thinking about how your feet hit the ground. Just a number of different ways to kind of be mindful as a form of meditation. Drink water.
Yeah, and you can, if you're a person of faith, you can incorporate religious things as well to it, that you connect with. Like, there's so many options. So just don't X out meditation before you try it or do some research. So drinking water
is that you meditate on as I drink. That's green tea. But that's green tea after 2 of these being filled with water, which is my goal each day. Shout out to Sasha. She's not here today, but if she does go back to listen, I want her to get shout out. So she has me doing this water challenge so that she can see if that will help me to get from this plateau of trying, because I've been doing the working out and eating well, and I've kind of like not been able to get past losing a certain amount. And so I'm drinking a certain amount of water. Shout out to Sasha and her health coach coming up, y'all. Anyway, so I've been drinking the water and it has helped. And if nothing else, my skin looks and feels beautiful. So, so drink lots of water. Actually, the next one, I'm going to shout her out as well because the water has impacted my sleep. I have been able to sleep like a baby. I think between the working out and moving it up a little bit from 4 days to the more days, and drinking the water has impacted my sleep. So our next one is making sure you're doing a sleep routine so that you can give your body rest and really kind of taking care of your body through rest. And so shout out to Shasha again, because I don't know if it's the water or the extra mile, but one of them has got me going to bed and like as soon as I get to bed. So
yes, definitely check out Sasha. What's her page is Better Fly with Sasha? Yes, so you can check her out too if you would like to get more of the tips that she has.
I'm going to try to bring her in here. I have 2 people I want to try to bring in to kind of talk about health. So we'll see if I can grab one of them on a Thursday. Sorry, go for it.
Okay. Yes. Come, Sasha. All right. So Sharea just mentioned the rest, making sure that you're getting adequate sleep each night. You want to get between really 7 or 8. Once you get to 6, that's a little iffy. So you want to really aim for like 7 to 8 hours, of sleep each night. You want to put together a routine that helps you to prepare to go to bed. Like you don't want to watch, I don't know, something intense or do, have a whole lot of noise or something like that and then just try to go straight to bed. Taking 20, 30 minutes to try to calm yourself down, to, be ready to rest, to calm your mind, your body, and then to be able to have a restful sleep is really important. Finding places and things that bring you joy. So
we are absolutely telling you that self-care and joy is a form of resistance and advocacy and taking care of yourself too, right? In times of unrest and times of seeking justice for our communities and the people we love, we have to make sure that part of caring for them is caring for ourselves. So making sure that you are seeking out joy actively. Like I am telling you that, I'm asking you to do it. Just even if you did it once a day, seek out some form of joy. If it's your children's face, their laughter, if it's your favorite song, if it's your favorite piece of cake, maybe not so much all the time, but whatever it is that you're trying to do, find it and live in it and be present in that moment of joy, right? Because that's going to be how we resist even as we are fighting as a community. So anyway. And so the last 2, and I'm going to shut us down because we are like over, like who knows what. But it doesn't really matter. If you're still with us, thank you. Last but definitely not least, you guys know that I believe in a trauma-informed approach. And so the last 2 are about connection and hope. And so I ask that you make sure you stay connected. Make sure that you are connected to other people that bring you joy, that bring you love, and bring you an expression of the best version of you, right? So make sure that you are always finding that in yourself. And then last, find hope. Find hope in the moment, hope in each other, hope in the changes and the possibility, and find hope in yourself so that you can also share that with all those that are in your community that you love. All right, you guys, I hope everyone has gotten something. We will be back same time, same bat channel. Love you guys. Be well.
All right, bye.